Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how I made some cards with the background prints I made in my last video using my Gelli plate and my Vivid Ultra Metallics from ColourArte. Let your imagination run wild with all the possibilities of how to use these fun but oh so addictive to make background prints. Okay, so the first thing I did was I went through my papers and decided which ones spoke to me. For instance, these two caught my eye, and this blue one in particular reminded me of dragonfly wings, while the orange one, being complementary in color, made me think it would make a good body for the dragonfly. So I pulled out my Tim Holtz dragonfly die cut. It comes with an embossing folder to add even more texture, but let me show you my process. First, I measured the width of the body to determine I would need a strip of paper at least 1 inch wide. So I trimmed that off of my orange background sheet. Then I measured the widest point of the wings to determine I would need at least a 2-inch strip, which I also trimmed off of my green print. I laid them both over the appropriate parts of the die and taped them in place with a small piece of masking tape to prevent them from moving during the cutting process. Off camera, I ran them through my die cut machine, and now I'm gently removing the masking tape. You could also use washi tape. This is the best way to conserve your papers. Rather than cutting a whole orange and a whole blue dragonfly, just cut off what you need for the various parts. That way you can get several more dragonflies rather than just one. So now, as you can see, the two pieces are pretty much stuck together just from the pressure of the machine. This will make it easy to insert both pieces into the embossing folder without them separating and moving about. Just align the die cut with the lines inside the embossing folder and add a few tiny bits of tape to hold it in place. Then run it through the machine once again. Okay, so I've run it through my machine off camera, and now I'm gently removing the tape. If you have any trouble removing the tape, here's a little tip for you. Use your heat tool to carefully heat the tape, just enough to soften the adhesive, and it will release quite easily without tearing your paper. Now let me show you what we have. We still have these straight edges along the body, which we don't really want. So I peeled the two layers apart. Remember, they are only sticking together just from the pressure of being run through the machine. You can use a pencil to draw the lines to cut, or do it freehand, whichever you are most comfortable with. So just trim those straight edges away, but don't cut off the legs. I want the legs to be the same color as the body. And it turns out I also needed to trim off some of the straight lines along the top of his head. So now all I need to do is glue the body to the wings. For this, I'm just using a glue stick, which will give me just a little extra time to move the pieces into place before it dries. Then I like to take a dry cloth and wipe away any excess glue on top. I guess I didn't really need to add the glue all the way down his body, but it will dry and it won't be a problem. At this point, you can use a black ink pad and hit the embossed lines on the wings to bring out the texture and design, or you can use other products such as metallic gilding pastes or even other ink pad colors. It's a good idea to just use what you have and play with your products that you already own. I've decided to use black soot distress ink because it is very forgiving. If I get too much ink on the wings, I can wipe it off and come back with the ink pad and hit those high spots again. Now to finish off this card, I cut a piece of teal cardstock 5 inches wide by 12 inches long so that when scored and folded in half, I would have a 5 by 6 inch card base. I used the Spellbinder's Elegant Ovals die. For my first die cut, I used the largest frame on a scrap of purple cardstock I had. I only ran the die through the machine once and it did not cut out the details very well, so I left the pieces intact. And then I cut it again on one of my gel printed backgrounds. And this time I ran it through my machine several times to make sure it cut out all the intricate details. And if I line it up, you'll see that the purple dye shows through the detail cuts. I thought that was just enough showing to bring out the purple color in the background paper to tie it all together. Now the background color is a little close to the color in the wings, so to help separate them, I took a scrap that I had used to clean off the excess paint on my brayer. These two colors were Pink Azalea and Solar Vivid Gold, which are two of the same colors used in the background. So I used the third frame in the die to cut this piece. Then when I laid this down, I think it is just enough color variation to help bring the dragonfly to the forefront. So let's go ahead and glue everything down. So now I'm just laying down a line of double-sided adhesive, and I'm going to center it and adhere it to the front of the card. Now since this next die layer has those openings around it, I like to use a double-sided adhesive that lays down the adhesive in dots, like the Scotch adhesive dot roller. It will not fill the openings with adhesive, so that's just one less thing to worry about. And then I just use my regular line adhesive for the inside of the frame. So go ahead and align the two pieces and press them down. Now center and adhere the final frame to the card. Next, take the dragonfly and bend the wings slightly with your fingers. Add some foam dots beneath the wings. Add tacky glue to the body and legs. And then adhere the dragonfly to the center of the card, shaping the wings with the foam dots for depth. To add some sparkle to the wings, I squeezed out a line of crystal glitter glue onto each wing, and then I spread the glitter glue evenly with my fingers. This will also help the glue dry quickly. For my next card, I chose this background paper. Because the colors are so vibrant, I saw peacock feathers, but I didn't have any peacock feather dies, so I just used a regular feather die. I was able to cut 3 feathers from this one background sheet. But let me show you what I had to do. Both feathers are going in the same direction. Okay, when you turn them both the same way, they're both going in the same direction. But I wanted one that was going in the opposite direction. So in order to do that, to cut the first 2 feathers, I had to put my paper right side down on against the die and cut it. When I wanted this third die to be different, I had to put the cardstock right side up. That gave me one turned the opposite direction. And I just wanted that for interest. Next, I just ran some black cardstock through, and this doesn't matter which way you turn the cardstock because it's the same on either side, and all you have to do is just flip the paper. And what I wanted to do with these is give the impression of a shadow. So now it's just a matter of figuring out which ones go together, like this here, and so on. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue these, and then I'll come back and show you what I want to do next. So I've glued the feather pieces together, offsetting the black slightly to give the appearance of a shadow. Now I want to add some pen work to the feathers to give them a bit more detail. I used a food ball pen for this, and I'm just drawing sketchy lines, similar to those in a leaf, and I'm not using any pressure on the pen, but rather allowing it to skip over the surface some for a more realistic look. Okay, in the interest of time, I went ahead and added my card layers to this black 5" by 6.5" card, cutting each layer a bit smaller than the previous layer. I chose a copper and a purple layer to help bring out those colors in the feathers. So I've got my longest feather first, then I'm going to put the two slightly smaller feathers on top with the stems of the feathers together so that I can wrap a piece of twine carefully around them, but not too tightly. I want to be able to manipulate the feathers so they look nice on the card. Then I will tie a bow at the top. So now I'm just gently spreading the feathers apart, being careful not to tear the paper. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I used one of my really old hand punches from probably 15 years ago, and it's from Family Treasures, but I simply punched it at the center point on each edge for this decorative touch. So now I'm just going to place some double-sided adhesive on each feather, treating it as a single embellishment, and then I'll center it on the card front. I also went ahead and stamped a small sentiment, thinking of you. I cut it out and added a foam dot to the back for some added dimension. I'll adhere it right here where the feathers meet at the top. And there's our second card. I have two more cards to show you that I've already completed. I cut this oval shape from one of my jelly prints using the same die as on this card. I added foam dots to lift it up from the base card. Then I used this die from Tim Holtz. Each butterfly is two parts. First, I cut the solid butterfly from another one of my jelly prints, and the detailed butterfly is cut from black cardstock, which is layered over the solid one. Let me see if I can get a little closer for you to see how pretty those colors are in the butterfly jelly print. I used Faber-Castell's texture gems in the pearl color to add some pearl dots to the background. And you can use any other kind of pearl paint, such as liquid pearls by Ranger. Some fabric paints will work. And I simply use them to dot some lines for the path of the butterfly, and also around the perimeter of the card. And then my last card, very simple. I used this die from Tim Holtz and just simply used another one of my jelly prints as the main background. And I just wanted a very thin border of this hot pink layer showing before adhering them both to this piece of shiny black cardstock. It is really nice for cards since it is white inside, allowing you to stamp or write inside without using special inks or pens. So I just cut out some of the wildflowers from black cardstock and adhered them to the front of the card. And I used one of Tim Holt's Chit Chat stickers for the sentiment, just as I did on this butterfly card. And that's it for today's project. Here are some still shots for you to gaze at. I tried to show the pretty shimmer and shine on the background prints, but it is really hard to capture on film. In person, though, they are gorgeous. You can find a complete list of the supplies I used in the description box below the video and on my blog. If you enjoyed today's project, please click on the like button, and you can find me on these social media links. I would also love for you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. That way, I'll be able to continue to share my projects and tutorials with you in the future. Thanks for watching, and remember to always take time to play.